Thanks, Lucy, and good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I'd like to talk about the actual word sustainability in palm oil. It's always been a controversial word. It's a source of tension between the environmental NGOs and certainly industry, as are issues that Sherry and some of the others have highlighted: deforestation, burning, illegal logging, peatland development, displacement of local communities. The RSPO was formed in 2004. It has come a long way since then, and we don't really have any excuses today as an industry. We have the handbook, the guidebook that tells you how to produce palm oil sustainably. So as global companies and certainly I hope smaller companies and smallholders in future should also take up the principles and criteria of the RSPO. It's grown quite rapidly. Today we have 457 members of the RSPO, and obviously national interpretations of the principles and criteria have been developed for many different countries: Malaysia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and also certainly the African countries are also coming up with their own national interpretations as well. The formation of the RSPO was very important because it was created by multi-stakeholders, and that's an extremely important part of the process, because if it was a standard created by the industry, it would certainly not have the same credibility as it does today. And I also know that certain people have been concerned about where the RSPO has been going, but let me assure you from the executive board perspective that we're certainly headed in the right direction now. I think there have been some changes that we've made to the Secretariat, and hopefully you will see a more efficient RSPO, which will hopefully bring sustainability within the industry to the next level. What are some of the root causes of land and social conflict? Certainly in Indonesia, relatively more than Malaysia, you have ambiguous land title, unclear property rights over forestry, or over forests, and of course allied with poverty. The land title in Malaysia is much clearer than the land title in Indonesia. In Indonesia, you get something called an izin lokasi, which is a location permit, and with that you then need to go through the whole process of land compensation and release. It's totally different. You go and engage with the local communities, and the local communities will come and claim the land and say to you, yeah, my land is basically from here till as far as the eye can see. There are no GPS coordinates. There's nothing like that. So it's very ambiguous and very difficult to actually manage on the ground properly. And the whole process can actually take years. And unfortunately, the local authorities and the Regency has a 3-year 50% release clause within his contract with you, which says that he's able to take back the land if you don't successfully clear it, more than 50% of it within 18 months. So that doesn't make us trying to implement proper sustainability or RSPO principles and criteria into land use and land clearing and development of plantation. It doesn't make it very easy. And obviously, in some cases, local communities will actually slash and burn the land to establish their rights before the actual plantations get licenses to go in, so that they can actually claim for the land. 85% of today's palm oil comes from Malaysia and Indonesia. There are extremely big differences in operating environments. Indonesia, you have 17,000 different islands, 225 billion people, 300 ethnic groups, and 250 different dialects and languages. But the key differentiator is the way that the laws are enacted and enforced. In Indonesia, you can have up to 6 different layers of law. The ambiguity in interpretation, application, and enforcement is extremely marked compared to Malaysia. Provincial laws can also override federal and national laws sometimes. I'll give you an example. In provinces like the province of Jambi, it's against the law to have open burning. That's federal law. But in the Jambi province, the Bupati, the local regency, says to the farmers, you guys can go ahead and burn up to 2 hectares. That's certainly in conflict with national law. I just want to talk about the perception or the statement I hear quite a lot from the media, in that oil palm plantations involve the mass clearance of primary rainforest. perhaps that's a little bit simplistic. Many mechanisms need to be understood. Certainly some on a macro basis are completely outside the industry's influence. Spatial planning, mapping, concessions for which ministry we don't even know sometimes. Sometimes it's forestry, sometimes it's agriculture, sometimes they've got the same land. And after areas are logged intensively, that's when plantations get the permits to go in for agriculture, not the other way around. And there's also a gap between global expectation and local reality. I'll just give you one example of our operations on the ground in West Kalimantan. As part of the RSPO principles and criteria, we actually did a fully comprehensive high conservation value assessment in the area and identified 22,000 hectares which were supposed to be high conservation value area. The local authorities, the provincial authorities and the Bupati were extremely unhappy with us because we decided that this area had high conservation values. So they actually took back the land and gave it to companies which decided that, we don't really care about HCVs and we'll go in and clear tomorrow. So that's, to me, one of the biggest challenges that we face within the industry of successfully or thoroughly implementing the RSPO principles and criteria. Just wanted to talk very briefly about the challenges of deforestation and the application of the HCV framework. I think if companies decide to properly implement the HCV guidelines and framework before they actually start clearing the land, that would certainly help with the credibility. I think the whole toolkit that the HCV comprises of today is a very, very effective tool for spatial planning, the planning of riparian reserves, and for the total management of a plantation. If that is done before the whole process starts, many, many things are much easier. A lot of the issues are actually dealt with to begin with. You also have the problem of slashing and burning, haze. The yearly forest fires, and haze is certainly not an issue, certainly for us in Singapore as well. We're also directly impacted by this. People have been burning for the clearing of land since time immemorial. That's a simplistic view, unfortunately. The burning must stop. That's what everyone always says. But the problem is, in reality, the farmer isn't going to pay up to $200 a hectare to mechanically clear his land. He's just going to light a match. That's just the simple reality of life on the ground. So, we all know that one of the root causes of this is poverty. So, as part of an initiative, we've basically collaborated with Conservation International as well as the oil and gas company Medco to come up with a climate action working group. And we had our first meeting and workshop in Indonesia a couple months ago. And we hope to get the involvement of various different sectors, including local government, NGOs as well, to help to get build capacity within local communities on the ground, and to help mitigate the incidences of fire, and to provide technical expertise, education, and also financing for environmentally friendly land usage. Peatland development covers more than 30 million hectares of land in Southeast Asia, and significant areas of this have already been developed for agriculture. Peatland burning has long since been outlawed in Malaysia and Indonesia, but it still takes place on a very limited scale today by small farmers. The RSPO provides guidance on this, and planting on deep peat soils is certainly outlawed. Many companies already have a no deep peat planting policy, and the RSPO principles and criteria also provide guidelines for peat development, and that's again, it's part of the handbook. So there is no excuse anymore for people, not saying we don't know what to do. Finally, we just want to talk about the RSPO, and I think this topic's been covered already today with regards to the uptake of certified sustainable palm oil. Certainly, the growers have always said, they're not satisfied with the premium, but they probably never would be satisfied with the premium. We're not sure exactly where some of those figures come from, but I think some of the figures that I heard quoted just now of $15 to $16 as a cost to get your plantation, up to the standards of the RSPO P&C. Yes, the costs are variable. I think there's certain plantations we have where the costs were far lower, and certain plantations that we have where the costs are higher. depending on some of the, whether, the social issues cost a lot more to resolve, whether it's Indonesia, whether it's, it's Malaysia. So there certainly is an impact on your bottom line, but as the world is a much, much smaller place right now, you certainly can't hide where these things are concerned, and we're totally committed to making sure that we try and lead the way with regards to the implementation of this, and also try and set an example for the people on the ground, especially the smallholders on the ground as well. The RSPO is a living document and a standard which is constantly evolving and continually improving. That's Principle 8, continuous improvement. Unfortunately, I also hear a lot of people saying that the RSPO and the industry should be at the finishing line already. We're just at the beginning of our sustainability journey, and hopefully people or entities which have been trying to undermine the process understand this a little bit better. Thanks.